this little tutorial, I have a piece of cherry that I'm going to be doing a 3D carve on, and I have multiple bits, so I'm going to have to do a couple bit changes, and I'm going to show you how to change the bits in between the toolpaths and re-zero your z-axis. You have a couple options. If you have remaining material that's not being carved, you can zero right on top of the material, but if you're like me and typically try to use as much as the material as you can to limit the amount of waste you have, you can also zero to your machine bed. I do that often enough for most of my carves, as a lot of my surfaces are irregular, uneven, and just makes a more precise Z. I'll also take you through a little process to get you the most accurate thickness of your Z probe. Okay, so here's the our standard Z probe that comes with our Silverback 6060 and our Mandrill 3036. It's approximately 20 millimeters thick. However, it's not. That's not the actual thickness, and they do tend to vary slightly. I'm going to show you how to take a proper measurement so you have the exact thickness that you can input into your sending software, whether that be G-Sender, Open Builds, or Easel. I use a set of calipers. I'm going to have this in millimeters, as most of you do probably use millimeters for your measurements. I do personally prefer inches. So first you're going to take, first you're going to loosen the digital caliper here, the locking nut on the digital calipers, and actually we sell a set of calipers on yourhome.com, and we'll post a link on the video on the bottom for you to, if you don't have a set and you'd like to purchase a set. And so I got the thickness of the housing, which is 20.07 millimeters, and that's from the bottom of the housing to the top of the housing. But you're going to notice that there is a slight recess to the actual plate. Get close. Yeah, there we go. There's a slight recess, and that actually comes into account for a little bit of air carving if you don't minus that from the housing thickness. So with these calipers, there is a nice depth gauge, so just make sure to always zero, because when you go forward and you come back, sometimes it's not always zero, and it's working. See, it's working today, sometimes it doesn't. But if you lay that flat on top of the housing like so, and then slowly bring down the depth gauge till it hits the plate, you're going to get a number, and I got 0.49. So you minus 20.07 by 0.49, and that'll give you the actual thickness, which will be about 19 and I guess a half millimeters or something. And that's what you will input for your probe thickness, and that'll get you the actual distance from your material to where it registers the signal. And you'll notice that I have a carve that's already partially done. I went through my detail, and now I'm going to be doing my cutout. However, you can't zero to where it's been carved anymore. You can't, because when you do your toolpaths, it's always going to calculate the actual thickness. So with this piece of wood, I have two options for when I calculate my my toolpaths, because I do have some wood that hasn't been carved that is still the exact same thickness as what I inputted into my software in my toolpath. Or If you don't, sometimes I don't have either A, enough, or B, it's uneven and you can't get an accurate measurement. You can also zero from your machine bed. That is software specific. I don't believe there's an option in easel, but if you're using VCarve Pro, Aspire, or Carve Co, you have an option in material setup to zero from the machine bed, and that does all the math for you. It takes into account your Z-probe thickness, your material thickness, and it'll do all the calculations for you, and it'll come to the top of your material and start carving. And that's really good for 3D work if you have no way to zero your Z on the material anymore. So you can zero here if you have enough, and you just move your bit over 0 and then go back to XY0, or you just jog over to here, 0 here, and then you can go back to XY0. Every time a carve is done, a toolpath that's been done, it always returns to 0, so never change 0, 0. Keep it in the same spot. Don't shut down your program, don't shut down your computer, or turn off the controller. That just make sure you stay in the exact same position, so when you jog over, you can go back, and we're going to go through that next. Okay, so as you can see, I have a 1/16 tapered ball nose inserted into my Makita right now, and I'm at my 0, 0 position. It finished its carve and it went right back to its XY0. So we don't want to change that, because if you do change those 0, 0 values, then it's not going to line up with your next bit. And so all you have to do is just you jog. So we're gonna go over to the machine bed where the Z probe is, because in my Toolpaths, that's how I calculated my Z0 was on the machine bed, and we're going to align it so it's above. But I have to change my bit first, so we're going to do that. Tighten the bit. Blow the dust off, because that could possibly add a little bit of height to your bed and throw off your Z. I always clean off the end of the bit, and then I will attach my clip to the bit, make sure that's under, and now I jog my Z down nice and slow just to get it close. That way it's not traveling for a very long time. You can set most sending software to send an error if it doesn't find the probe in a certain distance. So if you get it close, then you can avoid that. So I'm pretty close there, and I'm going to select my probe function, make sure it's communicating. Okay. And then I'm going to start probing. This is going to go through it twice. I use G-Sender software, so it does one quick pace check to find it, and then it does a slower rate to get a more accurate depth. And we are now done. Alright, get that out of the way. And now we're going to jog it up till it's above the material. And then one more just to be safe. And we're going to jog back to our X0. And in G-Sender you can just click on the X and it's just going to move your X-axis. It's not going to lower your Z-axis. It's not going to move your Y-axis. So I'm just going to click go to, and it's going to go across. And I got some clicking in my wheels. That's okay, doesn't affect anything. And now we're ready to carve. Normally I would just take this to the table saw and rip the edges off, but I was going to show you that zeroing from the machine bed for your Z, how accurate it really is. I'm going to quickly show you what you can also do after a bit change, because you're never going to have an exact depth because we don't have bit setters. So you're never going to be able to put that in the perfect spot and have the same exact length from your collet to the end of your bit ever. So that's why you always have to do a Z0 reprobe it every single time. And so for easel, for instance, if you're just going to do it on your machine bed, always pick the same spot you did your original zero from, which I would have probably done it from somewhere here anyway. So then you would just jog it down. And get on there, and then you put the Z probe underneath and you probe it there, and then you just go back to Y0. And then you're good to go. You can start it right up. So that's what we'll do now. Okay, so I'm just going to show you what I couldn't show you when I was jogging the machine in the software that I use. This is G-Sender, and in G-Sender, I'll put it to millimeters for you, but you go to settings, probe, and then you input the thickness that you get. Yours is going to be different than mine. Actually, I think after using mine for a while, it's different than this one. As this computer isn't currently attached to my machine, but yeah, you will change your Z probe thickness in your settings. Open builds, easel, all similar, different ways to get there, but you need to put that in all those programs as well. But what I like about G-Sender is we can give you a pretty good visualization without the machine actually running. So you will X0, Y0 right here, and to wherever it is. I have the center on my projects. If you do the bottom corner, then you won't have these negative squares. You're only going to have this up here, and your whole square will be on the positive spectrum of this graph here. But since mine's in the center, that's why it's represented this way. So I would all I do is just raise my Z up. You can see in the animation it's raising it up, right? And then I would jog it. Oh, I got millimeters set way too much here. Oh God, this is slow. So then I would jog it. I'm gonna go back and put it back to inches. Hold on a second here. Boom. And it'll be a lot quicker. So now will move inches. So you just jog it off the material when you want to do it on the bed or wherever your z-axis is, or your z probe is. So, and then I'm over the 8-inch mark, and then I would select my probe settings. I can't touch it, it's not connected, so I can't go through it, but then you would just hit go to, and it goes back. Don't hit go to X0, Y0, because it will lower your bit just to its the safe traveling height, but it's not going to take into account your material thickness, because that is in the G code of your file and not within the software. So the software is going to think that it's going to be safe for your safe height travel, and then it'll more than likely bang back into your material. So if you hit just go to X, that's the only axis it's going to move. I don't know if Open Builds is the same, and I'm not 100% if that's the same if you're going to use easel as your sender software. But that's just something to keep in mind. Worst case scenario, if you don't have that option, just use the jog functions and move the exact same amount of times you move to go over your Z probe. So you can just do it this way as well. And then it goes right back to 0. Okay, so setting up your CAD software for your cuts is pretty generic for all the CAD softwares. Carveco, VCarve, VCarve Pro, and Aspire, they're all the same, those three. Carveco is a little different, but same basic idea. Easel, again, a little different, but same basic idea. However, Easel doesn't give you this option to go to the machine bed, I believe, and Carveco does, but they label it top and bottom. So you go through your steps, your job type, and then your job size. What I find important, specifically when doing cutouts or zeroing from the machine bed, I need to know my thickness exactly. So the material thickness can't be approximate, it needs to be bang on. So if you have a piece of material that's 1 1/4-ish inches, you're going to want to find out what that difference is, because if it's just shy or just proud, you can run into air carving or bit dragging, which can damage your bit, throw off your axes, and ruin your carve. So keep that in mind. I get into a habit of trying to put the exact thickness that I'm going to use every time, even if I go back after, because I know I sanded it or I surfaced a piece of material or planed it. I'll go back after I've designed it and reset the thickness of the material to the new dimensions. So don't forget that aspect of this. And again, easel, I don't believe can position. If you design an easel, you're not going to be able to do your zero from the machine bed. But if you design in Carveco or VCarve and use easel as the sender to the machine, you can still do this. Just easel is just going to read the G code that's been generated and do it that way. Okay, you're going to notice that I didn't cut all the way through my material, and that's because I set that up in my toolpath that way, just because I didn't have a sacrificial piece underneath, and I knew I was just going to take this to the table saw and just cut it out anyway, because there was no intricate corners to cut out. So I just wanted to show you guys that how to set onto the machine bed if you can't do it on the material, and that it still does an accurate cut, and it still knows where it is, and it's possible to do multi-bit carves 3D carves, if you have nowhere to zero on your material. However, that will be limited to software to do it easily, and as I've stated, Carveco and VCarve both have those options very easily, and you don't have to worry about doing anything in your sender software. So there's the profile, there's the piece. So I hope this video helps. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask in the user group or on the forum. Thank you for watching.
Jungle.